Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Backlot 605 podcast. I'm one of your hosts. I'm Casey Kelderman. Joined with me, as always, is my co-host, Brian Mensing. Brian, how are you?
I'm doing well. It's been a busy, very busy week, and trying to get everything consumed is not easy.
Including your Starbucks and 9 hours of movies that we've had to watch for podcasts. I do agree with that.
Oh, it's worse than that. It's worse than that because I've also consumed the first part of In Search of Darkness documentary, which is another 4.5 hours. Saw Mortal Kombat and Stowaway. So yeah, it's a lot.
Brian's running on fumes this week, is what I'm hearing.
Hence the Starbucks.
Shameless plug to Starbucks. Please sponsor us if you're listening, CEO of Starbucks. We could use it. This is episode number 129 of the Backlot 605 podcast. We are here to discuss The Godfather Part II, aka The Godfather Part II. This is a first-time watch for me and Brian, once again, as we talked about on the Godfather episode. So we will get into it in the second half of the show. But before we get into that, let's introduce our guest for this week, Kevin Isaacson, the host of the Cinematic Heartland Podcast. Kevin, welcome to the show.
Well, thank you for having me. Glad to be here.
We are very glad to have you on. But before we get into what we do on this show, let's talk about your show for a little bit here. If people don't know what Cinematic Heartland is and they've never heard of it, what is it? What is your podcast all about, and what do you discuss on it?
It's a podcast that focuses on Midwestern filmmakers in the Heartland. I like to champion all the filmmakers out there. I've seen so much incredible work coming out of the Heartland, and I want to kind of help get the word out and kind of do my part to build the community. And the podcast is actually part of the Indie Film Hustle podcast network. But we talked to filmmakers all over the Midwest. I've had guests on a lot from Iowa because that's where the podcast is based. But I have had filmmakers from Illinois, Indiana, Minnesota. I've had UKC on the show once, and just kind of I've met a lot of different people, a lot of different Heartland filmmakers through the podcast.
Yeah, I listen to it every episode that comes out, and I love hearing all these stories from the Midwest. It's not just because I'm from Iowa. It's not. It's
part of it. It's part of it.
It's a part of it. That's maybe why I also love Field of Dreams more than one probably should, just because it's all about Iowa, but still, I love it nonetheless.
That's like saying that because I'm from South Dakota, I should like Dances with Wolves more than I actually do.
Brian, we only have one movie, so we have to love Dances with Wolves in South Dakota. That's all we have.
True.
It's the running joke of South Dakota. But yeah, go check it out. Cinematic Heartland. Definitely give it a listen. There are some familiar voices that we have had on our show, so there is a lot of crossover between the South Dakota, Iowa, Nebraska filmmaking area. I think it's a nice little close-knit community that these tri-states have right there, and throw in Minnesota into the mix and a little bit
too. Do we have to?
They're there.
I'm kidding.
They're there.
I'm kidding.
We're all one big happy family.
Exactly. The Midwest, the misunderstood the cross section of the film industry.
Yep. So we're all there. We're all one big happy Cinematic Heartland family. I like it. I love it. But let's jump into the show then. Brian, we got a new king of the box office this week. It's a movie I know you saw in the theater, I do believe.
I saw it yesterday.
The number one movie in the country right now. I don't know. I was about to say in the world. I don't know if it is in the world right now, but at least in the United States of America, it is. Mortal Kombat, $22.52 million here, number one at the box office. Also streaming on HBO Max, but it is nice to see that even though these movies that are streaming on HBO Max are still making good money at the box office. Godzilla vs. Kong proved that a few weeks ago, still is proving it now. And then Mortal Kombat is doing the same here, $22.52 million. That's a good number for this movie.
Mm-hmm. No, I think it's a pretty good, decent number for this movie. I will say, just for my experience of going to go see it, it's pretty middle of the road. You can definitely tell it's a pretty much it's not the first movie this guy has made, but it's pretty much looks like the first only big budget or anything that this made. We don't have very much for known talent in this film and whatnot. So I mean, it's not Mortal Kombat Annihilation. So that was a low bar for it to try to hop over. And I think at least it did that part. So it's definitely worth the watch, especially if you're a fan of the games and the franchise and all that.
Yeah, this is going to be an HBO Max watch for me sometime this week. I haven't had a chance to watch it. Heard definitely mixed things on it. I haven't heard an overwhelming love or hate for it, which is probably a good thing for a video game movie if there isn't an overwhelming hatred for it. That's always good.
I think the reason for the fact there isn't an overall hatred for it is because we got Annihilation before this. Like, people have been able to see, okay, this is how you make a really bad Mortal Kombat movie. So, I definitely think that there's room for improvement.
I am going to check it out later on today, but yeah, I'm not venturing out to the theater. I'm going to check it out on HBO Max.
Yeah. It did. I mean, in terms of the fact that I got to see it in the big screen XD, it was a very good fun to watch. It is definitely a big screen style type of movie in terms of what it is and the content and whatnot. But in terms of, the overall caliber of it, you're not really losing much also either by going to watch it on HBO Max.
So from what I'm hearing from this conversation is the original Mortal Kombat movie from the mid-90s is still the greatest video game movie ever.
Well, I would say you're not wrong in that respect and whatnot. I mean, the one advantage this movie has is that Raiden, is not a white guy like Christopher Lambert. But also, too, at the same time, too, every time I saw Shang Tsung on screen, all I could picture is 95 Mortal Kombat Shang Tsung and going, they should have just brought him back. Like, don't worry about continuity or anything like that. Just bring back the face of Shang Tsung because the guy that plays him is the accountant from The Dark Knight, and it was just weird. Like, it just didn't. His face just didn't seem right for me. So.
Interesting. I'll chime in next week when I actually watch the movie. So
there you go.
Number 2 this week, though, Demon Slayer the movie, $19.5 million, not too far behind Mortal Kombat. Again, big anime movies do tend to do very well if they get a wide release. This proves it right here. I mean, we've had a few. This was before the pandemic, like a Dragon Ball Z movie, like. Topped the box office for a couple weeks. I know there was another one like based on a TV show that got a big release and also took the top of the box office. So not surprising to see Demon Slayer doing big numbers here, even in the pandemic. This is probably the first wide release anime movie in over a year for sure. So it is definitely not a surprise to see anime fans running out to see Demon Slayer. I had never heard of it before this, though.
Me neither.
Yeah. me neither.
It's like, what is this? I only knew about it because of Reddit.
I mean, that anime audience is rabid, and they will run out to the theaters for their anime movies, and I dig that type of fan base.
You're not wrong.
Number 3 is Godzilla versus Kong. Last couple weeks, number 1 movie, $4.2 million for the King of the Monsters versus King Kong. Yeah, still doing pretty good for this movie here. What are we, a month removed from its release? Just about.
Give or take. Plus it's still streaming on HBO. So, Again, I still kind of wonder with some of these dual release ones with HBO Max, if, depending on the movie, if there's going to be any uptick once it leaves the streaming service or if it's going to putter out by that point. So I think Godzilla vs. Kong might be one of those ones that would possibly either just stay where it's at or even have a slight uptick once it leaves the streaming service, when those people are like, now that I've got my shot, now that I want to go out, what am I going to go see kind of stuff.
I think what we might be seeing with these, especially with these HBO Max releases, is that they'll hit really big, opening weekend, second weekend out, and stay steady in the box office. But I'm thinking those HBO Max numbers are still staying steady too, because I can see a lot of people going out opening weekend because they're like, I have to see this on the biggest screen possible. But then they're like, but then I want to rewatch it a week later or 2 weeks later, and it's on the HBO Max, and they might be seeing those kind of numbers. That's what I'm guessing. But
I think that's a very valid response. get that big screen, watching and whatnot. Be like, all right, well, I can watch this 2 days later. Well, I'm not going to go spend $15 again, but I'm going to go watch it on HBO.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Number 4 at the box office. Nobody, still staying in the top 5 of the box office here. $1.86 million. I do believe this one is on the premium video on demand portion of streaming right now too.
Yeah, it's like the $20 rental.
Yep.
Which I'd say anybody who hasn't seen it and whatnot, it's probably worth the $20 if you've got a couple people that are going to sit down and watch it.
Or go out to a theater. Or go out to a theater and watch it.
Well, yeah, if it's is still in their area kind of thing. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. This is one I am looking forward to checking out. Probably not paying the $20 to rent a movie. Still can't. That's still not in my wheelhouse.
No,
for $20.
I would agree. I would agree.
Rounding out the top 5 here, Raya and the Last Dragon from Disney, $1.68 million. Again, this movie we talked about a few weeks ago being struggling a little bit at the box office because of theater chains like the Cinemark not carrying it, but still it's hanging around the box office here as some of the bigger cities start to reopen their theaters. So I think Disney movies will be all right, and I do think places like Cinemark will restructure their ideas of not playing Disney movies once a certain Marvel movie hits the theaters in a few months. Black Widow being that movie. I cannot see Cinemark's not carrying that.
That's questionable, because one of the reasons why they're doing it is because of what Disney is basically saying they have to do. And the question is whether or not Disney is going to potentially be the one, even though they're the 600-pound gorilla, are they going to be the ones to potentially cave and modify it to make sure that they get the broadest audience possible for Black Widow? Because I think that could be potentially, a changer right there. Really, I mean, Raya and the Last Dragon, but we're talking the MCU here.
I would say so if they didn't have it available on premium video, the premium Disney Plus $30 thing too, where they can make. Well, you can't watch it in the Cinemark because they won't play it. You guess you're gonna have to stay home and spend the $30 to watch it in your house.
We'll see. I guess
I could see Disney playing that game. I don't know. I think that's the game changer for especially like Cinemarks and Disney. I don't know. Kevin, in the theaters near you, do they play Raya and the Last Dragon?
Yeah, it was in the theater. Again, not a film I'm gonna venture out to the theater to see. I think, talking the day and date with the streaming in the theaters, and I've talked about this on my show, how COVID's going to affect theaters going forward. And I think you're seeing it right now. I mean, look at the titles that are there. They're big event type films, or they have a big following already, like the anime. I don't think the day and date's going to hurt films like that, because some people are just they're going to want to see Godzilla versus Kong on a big screen. They're going to want to watch Mortal Kombat on a big screen. Coming up, they're going to want to watch Top Gun or Black Widow on the big screen. The day and date's not going to hurt those type of films, I don't believe.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to kill the smaller films. If they try and do that with a smaller film, a small drama, I don't believe it's going to work. I don't think it's going to draw the people out. And I think we're seeing that with the numbers that we have here, but.
Well, and I would say, to kind of to that same point too. I mean, granted, we're also talking about February, and we're having a little bit of a different conversation about COVID during February. But I mean, I think that's a pretty good example to set forth with like The Little Things with Denzel Washington, and then Judas and the Black Messiah as well, which were February releases, where they did decent, but they weren't doing these kind of numbers. They were good, solid films for what they were, especially Judas and the Black Messiah, but they're not tent poles like Godzilla, Kong, and Mortal Kombat, and whatnot. So I could definitely see where you're going with that.
I definitely think 2020 might be a good template for those smaller films. They'll just find a home on Netflix or Hulu, or trying the premium video on demand, or any other streaming service, picking them up. I definitely think that's the way, especially those smaller movies or like Oscar type of movies will go, because look at like Netflix was the leader of the nominations for the Oscars this year. So I mean,
Right.
I definitely think streaming is the route that's going to go pretty fast for
Well,
smaller movies and Oscar type of movies.
Well, and I think too that with the sake of like how Netflix, with like say like Netflix and how Prime's been doing stuff and Hulu and whatnot, is we're running into a change in the dynamic of what it's like to be the like straight to DVD kind of market and whatnot. We're so used to like since VHS, straight to VHS, straight to DVD is these are the low budget. We're only getting them out so we can churn them out kind of things. Whereas now with like the streaming services, that are producing and securing original content and whatnot is that are higher caliber kind of stuff is that it's kind of leaning away from, the straight to DVD, idea of that's bad. Then, that to like, hey, just because you're going to Netflix, straight to Netflix and you're not getting a theatrical release doesn't mean it's a bad movie. That these streaming services are giving these, potentially good movies a home and a wider audience that they wouldn't necessarily get, in front of, 3,000 theaters, in a 2-week period kind of thing. We're talking about 30 million subscribers, that have access to that movie. So I do think that shift is a positive shift.
Yeah, I mean, look at all the Oscar. I mean, right now, I think pretty much every Oscar movie, every movie that's nominated is either streaming on a streaming service or is available to rent. Yeah. So that makes it, especially in smaller areas, especially in the Midwest, to watch these movies doesn't make it impossible anymore. You can actually watch, all the Oscar movies before. You don't have to wait till the weekend to rush out to a theater and watch 5 of them in a row because, this is the only time I've ever been able to watch these movies. Now I got to rush and watch them in the theater quick.
I still didn't watch most of them, so.
Well, I didn't either. Oh, and we will not have Oscar talk on this show because we record this on a Sunday afternoon and the Oscars are tonight. They have not happened yet, but we'll maybe touch on them at a different point. I just throw that out there quick. But that's the box office for the week. I think we'll keep this. These numbers will be about the same here going forward for the next week or two, with Mortal Kombat at number 1 here for the next couple weeks. But Brian, what do we got in the news realm for movies this week?
A little bit of news, a little bit better than what we had last week and whatnot, ish.
This first one's the ish, Brian.
The first, and as much as I am a fan of the person to an extent based on certain franchises, even I'm like, what? Vin Diesel to star and produce in a live-action Rock'em Sock'em Robots movie, and the first thing I immediately, and I saw this headline and whatnot, I was like, I'm pretty sure Hugh Jackman already did this a few years back, and it was called Real Steel. But you know what? Hey, I think Vin is potentially trying to find his niche on maybe something he can get his fingers into now. So then that way, when the Fast saga is finally said and done and it's run its course over the next 15 years, that he's trying to get into a new franchise, kind of thing, because Riddick has only gone so far. So, I don't know if that's what this is or what he's trying to do here, or do we even know what studio is even supposed to be behind this and whatnot? Because this sounds like Vin's going to go play in the Disney pool again.
No, it's not. I would assume, who did the Battleship movie?
Well, I know it was directed by Peter Berg.
Yeah, Universe. I think it's Universal. I think it's Universal or Paramount. I think owns a lot of these board game. I guess Rock'em Sock'em's not a board game, but I guess that's the aisle you would find it in a store. So that's what I'm assuming it is. But this sounds horrible. Why is he doing this? I think it is why you said, Brian, he's looking for another franchise. Tried that with Bloodshot last year. That was a movie, and then he's that's everything Vin Diesel is in, kind of. That was a movie, and that's what I feel this will be right here. I don't see how is this going to make any money. I don't know. Vin Diesel's name, I guess, unless he's going to get beat up by The Rock. I don't see how a Rock'em Sock'em Robots movie is going to really work.
I had the same thought Brian did when I saw it was Real Steel with Hugh Jackman. And if he's looking for a new franchise to get into and be a big success, this is not it. Hate to criticize it before it's even done, but it has the earmarkings.
Yeah, exactly. And for all intents and purposes, it might turn out to be a relatively, good action-ish movie for Vin Diesel and whatnot. But I do think it's going to be one of those ones where, it'll be okay, but it's not like it's going to be, a huge heavy hitter to contend with and whatnot. The only way he could, I think, potentially do that is if he found a way to somehow get enough known people in the movie to help kind of bring it along, because the story is not going to be the one to do it. It's going to be about who you get to be in the movie is what's going to help to quote unquote elevate this movie to a point to where people are going to want to see it.
Watch it just be a biopic on how the Rock'em Sock'em Robots came to be, and Vin Diesel just narrates the entire thing. That's the movie I would watch.
Yeah, I was gonna say that's not a bad way to actually go about it, to be honest. Because I mean, he definitely has a very distinctive voice, and obviously we know that thanks to the Iron Giant and Groot. But at the same time, too, give me a narrated. Give me like a nature film like should be done by like Morgan Freeman or David Attenborough, and just give me Vin Diesel.
It's like watching Tenet. You need subtitles to understand what he's saying in that, though.
All right, so on to the next thing here, which actually I didn't know if this was even a thing until I saw you put it in the notes here, Casey. The Muppet Man, Disney-produced film based on the life of Jim Henson. And well, the first thing I think is, number one, I think having a biopic of Jim Henson, I think is a fantastic idea. He was a great individual that pretty much his work and what he did during the course of his life basically has touched pretty much anybody who's been alive for the last, 50, 60, 70 years, pretty much. And the fact that, the close relationship that Disney had with Jim Henson, it just only makes sense that this is the company to make a Jim Henson film. So I'm completely on board for this.
Yeah, and from what it sounded like, the Henson family will be involved with it, and has given like their blessing on the movie, and I think that's always important. Looking at you, David Bowie movie did that come out? I don't remember if did it.
No, I'm pretty sure it went straight to video or straight to digital and whatnot. Yeah. But yeah, it's one of those ones where even you saw the trailer for the David Bowie one, you're like, oh, this doesn't look good. Oh, and there's no David Bowie songs in it.
Yeah, so this will have plenty of Muppets, plenty of Labyrinth, plenty of Dark Crystal. All of that's included in this Jim Henson movie. So I think we'll see a lot of that in this movie. And I think he's prime for a biopic type of movie. And I think Disney he'll treat him right and definitely treat right by the Henson name. And I'm excited to see this story on the big screen and told through a narrative, because after I saw this news, I've been watching some like documentary pieces on Henson, and he has a fascinating career, of starting as a puppeteer on like public broadcast in I don't know where he originally started, just some small local TV station, and gained notoriety and started having national commercials with the Muppet characters, and then eventually obviously blew up into what we know the Muppets are today, and the legacy that Jim Henson left behind. So yeah, this is perfectly primed for a biopic, unlike another news article we will talk about.
Well, because I look at this and I'm like, okay, so I'm hoping this one would be more to the point where people are going to want to see this, other than because when I was just looking here, is like Saving Mr. Banks. Like, there's a little bit of the whole Walt Disney kind of thing and whatnot. I'm like, well, it wasn't enough for even with, America's Dad, Tom Hanks, to be in it. I'm like, I've still never seen it. But this is one of those ones where like, I want to see this one. Like this one fascinates me. So I'm all for it.
I like the nostalgia of it. I mean, that's what's going to draw me to it, because I grew up on Muppets and Fraggle Rock and all that. And I was just thinking of Saving Mr. Banks. I like that because of the nostalgic factor. It's a Wonderful Day in the Neighborhood, brought back memories for me because I grew up on Mr. Rogers. And so, yeah, the nostalgia value is going to draw me to this film. So I'm looking forward to it for that fact.
Let's just have Tom Hanks play Jim Henson too. Why not? Let him grow out a big beard, castaway size beard, and he can play Henson.
Oh, I don't know. I don't know. Tom Hanks can't just play all the major people of the Disney era.
Oh, he absolutely can.
I'm with Casey on that. He can.
You could play Julie Andrews in a biopic, and I'm there.
Not gonna lie, I want to. Now all of a sudden, I just want to be like, all right, let's redo a biopic for like Mary Poppins, and he'll just play the Dick Van Dyke, the Julie Andrews, the Walt Disney. We'll just do all of them.
He plays them all. It's his Eddie Murphy Nutty Professor movie.
You had to go Nutty Professor, really. I'd rather go Coming to America, but that's just me. Okay, and to keep on to the biopic news. Well, I mean, maybe we could go up from where we went before, Casey. Netflix to produce a Kiss biopic called Shout It Out Loud. Well, I mean, I never got around to watching Dirt.
It's horrible.
You said it was a film.
I liked it. I liked it. Yeah,
really?
I'm gonna fall on the other side of the fence for you. I actually watched it twice, and yeah, I enjoyed it. But again, it's hard for me to separate. Was it really a great film or a good film, or was it the nostalgia? Because again, I grew up listening to Motley Crue and enjoyed that part of the story. And
well, that's actually what my brain immediately went to is the fact that the age discrepancy. Like for instance, like me, I grew up during the time of Motley Crue and whatever, but I was also kind of the early years where I wasn't listening to too much of that kind of glam rock of the 80s and early 90s, where Casey here wasn't even thought of when Motley Crue was huge.
And then the 5 CDs I had as a kid included Motley Crue and Guns N' Roses and Def Leppard.
Yeah,
I grew up on Motley Crue, and I did not care for the movie. But in terms of this movie, I don't love Kiss, and that is a big piece of contention in our house because Kayla is a massive Kiss fan, so I get crap all the time for not liking Kiss, which is
good.
Fine. I get
good.
it.
Good.
I'm still not sold on the Netflix biopics of the Dirt left a dirt taste in my mouth. But hopefully with the Ramones biopic that we talked about last week with Pete Davidson playing Joey Ramone, maybe they can start turning it around with that and this Kiss one here. Yeah, I mean, it's who you going to get to play Gene Simmons and Paul Stanley is the big question here.
That's good. Those are going to be really big, tall shoes to fill.
Mm-hmm.
The curious thing for me with this is, as I was reading this, as I understand, Gene and Paul are involved with the film, and it's going to obviously be slanted positively towards those two. It'd be interesting to hear what Ace and Chris, their thoughts are on the film coming from their side. Peter Chris, I should say.
Yeah. And Ace is the first one I thought of, because if I remember correctly, Ace is the one that was kind of the one that didn't end things up very well with Paul and Gene. And yeah, absolutely. And I agree. If you're gonna have Paul and Gene involved, you're right. It's gonna probably slant a certain way, unless and potentially because they're at that age of their careers where at this point right now they probably don't give a shit. And hopefully maybe we get something like what we did with Rocket Man, in that they're like, you know what? Show the dirty, show the good, show the bad. It is what it is, and we're not going to slant it either way, kind of thing. So, and that was something I would be all for. And that's one thing I loved about Rocket Man is Elton John's like, yeah, I had some bad times, and we're not going to sugarcoat it. So, and I know that that's been the case with Kiss, and I hope that they go that same route. And this, I also think, would be great to play as a Rocket Man style biopic, where it's like a musical biopic, like what they did, because I think this plays very well into that respect as well.
Can't wait for the Love Gun sequence then. Yeah. In terms of that, I love when biopics aren't afraid to do the dirty and show all the good, the bad, the ugly. Bohemian Rhapsody did not do that. Straight Outta Compton kind of pushed some of the stuff to the side and definitely painted the two producers of the movie in a better light than they might have actually been at that point. But again, I'm hoping for the best for this movie. I want it to be good. I want to see an awesome Kiss heavy metal biopic on these guys. I think. I think it has something there. I didn't see a director or anything attached to it. I just saw so who knows? We'll see how it turns out.
Give us a good solid director to put it together. That'd be great. All right, so this one's all for Casey, which I will actually say is I actually watched it last night. It was one of the trailers in front of Mortal Kombat here, is The Conjuring, The Devil Made Me Do It trailer. As somebody who has never watched a single Conjuring film, any of the Annabelles, any of the Nun, the La Llorona, this does genuinely look really good. Like, this is something that makes me want to go in and watch these films, which, based on my 2021 movie endeavor, it's going to have to happen. It's going to be required viewing. But this actually, I've been trying to avoid trailers just because I want to go in, completely blind, knowing how these things are going to go. This looks really, really good. Mm-hmm. And you did a little bit of a reaction thing with this here, Casey. And as somebody who's a fan of the franchise, where do you see this as in regards to the rest of the Conjuring universe films?
Yeah, I think it looks great because it looks very different than the first two, and I think it's definitely because of James Wan is not behind the helm of this movie. Michael Chavez is stepping into the directing chair for it, who did The Curse of La Llorona, but that movie's not great, but it has an awesome look to it. So I like that he's bringing that type of look to it. It's cool to get the Warrens out of a creepy haunted house and putting them in a different type of situation. This kind of looks like a courtroom drama wrapped in, an exorcist type of movie, which we have seen before, but it's nice to see this introduced with the Warren characters, and like Patrick Wilson and Vera Farmiga are just dynamite in this role. I think they have such great chemistry. They're the best horror couple of all time. I think they're just so good together. I think this looks great. I think it has a nice homage to The Exorcist in the trailer too, which I really dug. I thought that was a nice tip of the hat to that. I'm excited to watch this in the theater. This is one of those HBO Max movies where, I'm a huge fan of the franchise, and I'm like, I have to see this in the theater with the crowd to watch the third Conjuring movie.
You've got all these, right?
Do I have the first two Conjurings. I don't know what other ones I have. It's really the only one you need to own.
No, but I need.
But Annabelle Comes Home is good too.
Right, and that's just it. I'm like, if I'm gonna do like what I've been doing with the rest of my films, whatever, this is gonna be the hugest endeavor ever, and I need to probably get started hopefully soon, so then that way I can try to get through 8 films.
I'll see which ones the only ones you would need to watch, Brian, are the first two Conjurings, and maybe Annabelle Comes Home. Yeah,
see that, and at that point here, I might as well just watch them in order, in chronological order, not release order.
Watch them in release order, please, because then you start with The Nun, and The Nun is not good. Anyway, well, Kevin, what did you think of this trailer? Are you a fan of the series at all?
I've only seen the first Conjuring, and I don't remember too much from it. A lot of these films, they kind of blend together for me. It's kind of like, Insidious and The Conjuring and Haunting in Connecticut, and all these films just kind of, they don't really stand out to me like an Exorcist or more recently like a Midsommar or Get Out or anything like that. Really, it's not memorable for me. They're good for what they are, and they're entertaining, but you walk away and it's kind of like, just chocolate or something. You have it, you enjoy it, and then you forget about it. And that's kind of the way these films are for me. But
I like that comparison here is it's like chocolate.
I love my chocolate, so I will take all that chocolate.
We're gonna have to use that going forward to be like, where's this on the chocolate scale?
There you go.
Fast and the Furious is like the milk chocolate, cream of the crop, chocolatiest of them all.
Yeah, I don't know what you're talking about there at all, Casey.
What do we got next? I know this is a trailer you didn't watch because it is a Marvel movie.
It is a Marvel movie, yes. The Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings trailer dropped out, and yes, I'm absolutely completely dark on it. I won't watch it. I don't have any intentions of watching. This isn't because I think it's going to be a bad movie. This is because, again, anything that is one that I know that I'm going to want to want to see. I'm going in completely blind this year. I don't want to know anything above or anything like that. So I leave this to you here, Casey, without giving me anything that you think would spoil it for me.
So me and Kevin will spoil this entire trailer for you. So actually, there's like zero spoilers in this trailer. The title is the biggest spoiler, I think, in the fact which is that the 10 rings are going to be in this, and the real Mandarin is going to be in this movie. That's it. As far as spoilers go for it, but as far as like the trailer goes and the look of it, man, this looks awesome. This looks completely different than any other Marvel movie. We're going straight into a martial arts type of movie, in which we haven't seen in the MCU. I think it looks really great, and it kind of looks like it's getting away from the Marvel formula, which I'm kind of like, all right, let's get past that formula. Let's mix it up. We're 20 plus movies and how many TV shows into this now, and let's mix up the formula a little bit. And that's one thing I didn't love about Falcon and the Winter Soldier, is it relied on the formula. So this one at least looks like it's getting away from that. And I think the visuals look incredible in this movie. And I can't wait to see the real Mandarin, because I hated the Iron Man 3 interpretation of Ben Kingsley as the actor and Guy Ritchie's weird fireman. I'm the real Mandarin.
I will give, for the sake of Iron Man 3, is that was the quote unquote twist a little off? Absolutely. But being able to see Sir Ben Kingsley just go bonkers off the wall was one of the reasons why I actually do enjoy that little spin at the end, is that we don't know who the real Mandarin is, and he is just a con artist that is just some weird quirky guy. Like, we don't get to see that side of Ben Kingsley very often, so I will say that much for it.
I hope this movie opens with where they did a little short on Ben Kingsley's character. What was that? I'm trying to think of what that was called, but basically he gets taken out of prison by the real Mandarin. I hope this movie opens with Ben Kingsley's like head rolling off his body, like getting decapitated by the real Mandarin.
Yeah, I'm looking, after seeing this trailer, I'm really looking forward to this one, because I'm all in for any type of martial arts film. I'm all in on that. So
not to go completely off topic here, but one of the things, for the sake of Mortal Kombat and whatnot, the gentleman who plays Sub-Zero, just for the sake of the martial arts, is why I bring this up here. The guy is Joe Talisman, that is from The Raid. Like, I think that if we would got Gareth Evans, who did The Raid, to do Mortal Kombat, I think you'd have a much better film. That's why, that's what I'm saying. Like, when you go to watch Mortal Kombat, just understand that you got a guy who's basically never made a movie before. So it's like, it's
his first feature. He's getting in a big studio movie for his first feature.
Right.
The Raid is awesome. The Raid is actually, we watched that as we were preparing to film our feature film, because we had some martial arts and jujitsu in that. And that was one of the films that we were watching, trying to get inspiration from. And not that, those are really complex fight moves and everything. But we definitely took inspiration from that.
Those are the Raid and Raid 2 are two of the ones where it's like, I wish they would get much more love, and letting those basically new martial arts young guys coming into the States and basically showing us Americans, this is how you do it.
Yep.
So
I still need to watch those. I haven't ever seen them.
Yes, you do.
Yeah.
So on that's all I've got for the news here this week and whatnot. And yeah.
All right, so that is it for the news. Let's jump into our main topic then for this week. We kicked off Francis Ford Coppola month a few weeks ago with the first Godfather film. This week we are going to be talking about The Godfather Part II from 1974. Like I said at the top, this is, again, first time watch for Brian and myself. Kevin, you have seen this movie before. You said this has been a while since you had seen The Godfather. Do you remember the first time you watched this series?
I don't remember the first time. I believe I was a teenager when I first seen it. It was really interesting, though, revisiting it, because the first time I watched it, I was just a moviegoer. I was just watching it for entertainment. Now I'm looking at it with a critical eye as a filmmaker, and it was really an interesting watch and going through the revisit of it.
Brian, what was your initial thoughts right here off the bat for the Godfather 2?
Well, I mean, the fact that for like you and I and whatnot, this is a first time viewing and whatnot. And I do think this is one of the ones where, like, having never watched it before and whatnot, there's a lot that's going on. It's a long movie. It's, 3 hours and 22 minutes long. Is sit there and it's one of those things that I think I need to go back and rewatch it because, again, there is so much that's going on. Very well put together movie. I really did enjoy it, but I do also think that, like, it's one of those ones that, even though it's extremely long, it is a multiple view kind of movie because you need to be able to, like, discern the young Vito versus Michael kind of dual thing that they got going on and whatnot. Because there were at times for me where it was kind of getting like a little muddled for me because there again is so much going on. So, but absolutely enjoyed it. Really did.
Yeah, I mean, going in for the first time watching this, I knew it was a prequel sequel movie where it's doing both at the same time. And for me, with that long run time, and we're following Vito and Michael at the same time, basically how both are starting their careers, and how it's a very different viewpoint from both of them. I found it a nice palate cleanser between the two. Is that we got to jump back and forth. Like, the movie always kept you on your toes that way. Like, what's going to happen with young Vito? What's going to happen with Michael? What's the balance between the two? How are they doing, their business differently? How are they doing it, very similarly between the two, father and son. And I found it nice to kind of jump back and forth between the two. And I mean, again, killer actors in this movie. I mean, everybody is just so great in this. You don't blink an eye for 1 second. De Niro taking over for Brando as Vito, like, he just slides right into it and feels like that same character, the younger version of
he
Vito.
even pulls off the jawline very well for it.
He does. He looks like a young Brando, and the mustache is impeccable by the end of it, and he's rocking it pretty hard. And yeah, I thoroughly enjoyed this one. I don't love it as much as the first one. Upon first time watches between the two,
right? And that's where I think that it's one where you need to watch more than once to really let it digest.
Yeah. So let's kind of jump into this movie here. Like I said, the jumps between both Michael and Vito. Basically, this takes place 5-6 years after the events of the first movie. Michael has still not fulfilled his promise to his wife Kay of legitimizing the family business. Still doing the underground shady work of the mafia. And basically, we open with like a very similar opening to the first Godfather, and it's at his Michael's son's communion, and they're having this big party, this big festival, and people are coming to visit Michael in his office, much like they did in the first movie, visiting Vito in his office during Connie's wedding. So
they like to party. Those Italians like to party.
They do like to party. They like their wine. They like their music. Yeah. What were your guys' thoughts on that? Because I love that these two open, that they mirror each other so much, and it is a very different situation how both Vito and Michael deal with all the people coming into their office, because you can tell from the first Godfather movie, everybody is very respectful or also terrified of Vito, whereas they're coming in here to visit Michael, they're putting him down. They're yelling at him. He's not getting away with anything here. He's getting no respect from these people at all. And I think that's a nice balance to open the sequel, showing how Michael is very, very different than his father.
That he's failing a little bit.
Well, I think you even see it even before they get in the office. I think you see it on the stage. The politician disrespects him by mispronouncing his name like 3 or 4 times. So you're already seeing the disrespect that people have for Michael, and it carries over into the office. But yeah, very different from what his father was receiving.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And that's what I love about this movie, is the balance between trying to fit in your father's shoes and trying to be your own man at the same time. Because I think Michael is still really stuck in that shadow of Vito being the Godfather, being who everybody feared, also loved and respected as well, and trying to step into those shoes that he never wanted to. He never wanted to be in that situation. Now he has to protect his family. And you see, you see how different Michael is and how his ideology of protecting his family is compared to that of Vito. And it's shown absolutely throughout this movie. And I think definitely going into like Vito's childhood of, losing his entire family within a few days of each other and ending up as an orphan and making his way to New York as an immigrant, as a child, really shaped who he is and how much he was a family man after that, because he didn't have the family growing up as a kid at all. He lost his mother and his father and his brother all within a couple days and had to basically find family in America after that tragedy happened.
I think as you say that, I think, you have to bring up the conversation of themes in both Godfather 1 and Godfather 2. Godfather 1, it's pretty clear. The themes, are our family, friends, loyalty. There are some other themes that I can mention later, but as you compare those particular themes to the second Godfather, I don't think Michael really has that deep passion for his family that Vito does. And you can see that throughout the entire film. The first one, Vito's doing things for his family. Michael's doing things for power in spite of his family, is pretty much the way I saw it. So I think the theme of the second film is more about power than it is family. He's trying to achieve all this power, and you kind of see that replay throughout the entire film.
Well, one of the things that I see too, like in comparing the two, is what the reason how dad did it versus how he does it, is like you said, family versus power. It's basically loyalty versus power kind of thing, where dad wasn't afraid to be violent, but violence wasn't the first course of action. Whereas with Michael, it seems that in order to get the power, you have to be violent. Whereas, Don Vito got the respect, got what he wanted out of loyalty first, and violence was basically the repercussions if you didn't play nice. Whereas Michael's like, yep, in order to get the power that I want, I'm going to have to be violent. I'm going to have to do it my way and not, try to find that happy medium with everybody. So I think it's a matter of he didn't learn basically the right path to take, from his father, just by even if he didn't want to be in that position, he didn't glean off, hey, this is a good approach to it. So that way people respect me, because, you're not going to want to respect somebody who's only doing it for the power. You're not doing it. He's doing it for just himself. Basically, he's not doing it for everybody to basically be able to prosper.
Yeah. I mean, you look at how Michael and Vito ran their business and how they were, how they ran the family is very much the opposite of each other. Vito ran the business like a family, whereas Michael runs the family like a business. Like if you're someone in my family and you're not doing what I want you to do, and you're not, giving me the outcome that I'm looking for, or the production that I'm looking for, you're out, you're fired, or in this case of a family, you're killed. You're out of here. You're done. And we'll talk about that especially at the end of this movie, how that is ever present and how Michael runs the family here in this movie. But I do love. Maybe we'll stick in the De Niro timeline first and kind of weave our way through into Michael's present day. But I do love the setup and the origin story of the Godfather in this movie, and how. Basically, like Brian had said, Vito gets all this respect first. He gets the loyalty first, and then the power comes. And if you don't do things my way, then things will get violent type of thing. And that's right away in this movie. Vito is basically is supposed to be handed over to this other Don in Sicily, and they're going to basically kill Vito because they know even if they let him go now, he'll come back at a different point to kill the Don of this a family here. And I mean, by the end of Vito's story in this movie, yes, that does come true, but it's not before Vito starts his own family, builds his own respect, his own empire, if you will, of people surrounding him, that he can, enable him to have that revenge and kind of put closure to that part of his life in a way. Is that he could have at any point, probably within his first couple of years of living in America, headed back to Sicily and taken out the Don if he really wanted to enact revenge. It could have been a stupid kid and just ran in there guns ablaze and trying to take the guy out. But no, he's the Godfather. He takes his time, plans things out, makes sure the guy doesn't know he is Vito Corleone. He makes sure that he doesn't know it's him. And that's just a strategy like no one else in that family would have done. Not even Michael, who's probably the closest to Vito, would have done in that situation, trying to enact revenge in that type of manner. And even looking at how both enact the revenge in both movies, where Michael takes out the police officer and the other head of the family in the restaurant, then Michael flees. He gets the heck out of there, leaves everybody behind. What does Vito do when he kills the other Don? He just goes back and hangs out with his family. Like that's a huge imbalance between father and son between these two movies.
Well, and I do like the fact the way we see Vito's life open up and whatnot is he realizes, okay, there's this guy that everybody seems to answer to. Everybody pays their dues, whatever the case is. Here's how I'm going to do it. I'm going to earn that respect, get him on my good side and whatnot, while he's building up his network, if you will, and whatnot. So that way he can pull off what he does at the end of it there. Just be like, hey, hey, this guy wants $200 per person, so he should be showing up with $600. And what's he do? He shows up with 100 and be like, hey, here's how we're going to work, and, he's smooth is what it is. He knows how to work people. He knows how to be able to glean that respect, that loyalty and whatnot, and to be able to build it up and be like, hey, you scratch my back, I'll scratch your back kind of thing. Because that in turn goes, further a little bit later down the road when he gets into the whole rent situation where, instead of the guy increasing rent, he decreases rent and gives Vito his money back.
That's one of my favorite scenes because he wins the conversation by not even saying a word. It just keeps lowering, and he wins by not saying anything.
He just looks at the other guy, and he's like, "Oh wait, no, $5 less. Yeah. No, $10 less."
I love how that scene starts too. Is that Vito goes up to the guy and basically says, this is the situation this woman's in, and can you help her out? And the guy's like, no, I'm not doing that. Like, I already have new tenants. They're paying more money anyway. And then Vito says, well, think about it. Talk to your friends about who I am. And then we don't hear what the friends say. We don't hear what anyone says about Vito. It's just when he shows back up to Vito's, place of business and comes back and knows who Vito is now, he's like, I messed up. I messed up. You're right. I'm wrong. Like, we don't know what anyone said to him at that point either. It's just that fear. You can tell there's fear in his eyes when he walks in that room.
Well, he even struggles with the front door.
Yeah. Right. I think what makes him start asking questions is because he literally is like, well, pulls out a big old wad of cash. So you need to figure for what time frame that is and whatnot. He's like, here's 6 months worth of that difference that you're going to be charging her. Don't change the rent. I will pay the difference. And in 6 months, come back for 6 months more kind of thing. And so that is probably, knowing he literally just hands him all that money all right there makes the gear start turning. Oh, maybe I should start asking questions. And then he's like, oh, you know what? I was wrong. Not only am I not going to charge her, or I'm going to leave her as the tenant. I'm going to get rid of those other people. Here's your money back, and I'm going to lower it,
And you get to keep the dog.
And you get to keep the dog. Right.
It's that, like, I that's some of my favorite scenes in the first movie too, is just how people react to the Godfather and to Vito, and it's just, you don't hear anything about it. It's just the actors' reactions to a certain scene or situation, and that's most present in the scene. There is like Kevin said, the guy is just struggling to get in the building because he's not sure if he wants to get in the building, even though he needs to. He's so nervous, and he's so nervous to get out. He's just trying to get out of that situation as soon as he possibly can.
And I love that supporting, character in there too. Whatever, just the smile on his face when he's just like click and opens the door like it's absolutely nothing. Like, really, dude, it's not that hard. I mean, like the struggle to get in, because like you said, does he want to go in? Is it the mental thing of why he's struggling to get in the door? But at the same point too, it's like, why is he struggling to get out the door? Like he's done his thing. His brain should be like, get me the hell out of here, kind of thing. And whatnot. And he's just so nervous that he's just on the struggle bus the whole time.
Yeah, I think that's definitely a big dichotomy change of how you look at Vito and Michael between the two, because you don't see anyone struggling to get their words right when they talk to Michael. They're pretty straightforward with him. Even that's shown in the first Godfather too, of the guy who's like reciting his lines of what he's going to say to Vito and wants to he's like sweating bullets trying to talk to him at the wedding. And no one is doing that in this movie with Michael. No one is showing him that respect, that type of fear. I think is also definitely a big part of how Vito ran his business and I don't even want to say how he ran his family, because it's very different how his family is not brought up at any situation within his business shown in this in this movie here in his like flashback scenes between the two.
No, it's very much left to myth and legend of how, we hear how people's reaction when you hear about what Don Vito is doing and whatnot, but not actually seeing or talking about what he's actually doing, which I think it was a very good way to display his character, just because of, again, going back to the loyalty versus power kind of stuff, between showing how is Vito doing it versus how Michael is doing it and whatnot, not giving us what he's actually doing, but just people's reactions to what he's doing. I think definitely lends towards why Vito was successful in what he did versus Michael's inability to replicate what his father did.
Yeah. Another thing I want to touch on in this is that the other members of the family, of the Corleone family in this movie, are very different than the first time we meet them in the first Godfather. Connie is given a lot more to do in this situation, definitely becomes more involved in the family business for sure. In this movie, basically comes right away to Michael and asks him for money and wants to be more a part of the family business. And again, Michael not treating her like a sister in the slightest in these situations, basically treats her like a secretary, like a right-hand man type of role she gets throughout this, or even a maid type of, or a babysitter, being there for the kids and Kay. Like that's kind of her motif throughout the rest of this movie. Her job description, if you will, for Connie is she's not the sister of Michael Corleone anymore. She's a part of the business. She's a member of the business. But I do like Talia Shire gets a lot more to do in this movie, and I think she's great in this movie, given a lot more to do. What are your thoughts on Connie, on her character development throughout, from the first movie kind of to what she does in this movie?
I thought it was better. She was given a more of a range, but also maybe I'm not recalling it right, but I don't recall the women's roles in the film being that great until the hotel scene where Kay says she's leaving with the kids and tells Michael about the abortion. And then Connie has a big scene after that where she's asking Michael to give Fredo another chance. Up until that point, I didn't see the acting out of any of the women's roles. And it really came on later in the film for me. But
I think that's kind of where, we see that shift, where where you start to continue to see the breakdown of Michael and whatnot, because he's wanting that power, but not only is he struggling to get the power, but those that he feels would probably should be submissive to him are basically calling him out, including his wife and his sister and whatnot, where, you figure, especially during the times and whatnot, the women are supposed to be more subjective and, submissive to everything and whatnot, where even these women, are in a strong family, which has caused them to be very strong to the point where they're like, you know what, we need to finally put our foot down, So I think that's probably done intentionally, to be able to show that shift of where's that shift of power going, because it's not going to Michael.
Mm-hmm.
And you see kind of Michael shuts Kay out. Anytime there's a difficult situation, she gets shut out of the family, literally on screen. In the first film, he goes in the telephone booth to get the call about his father, and he closes the door and Kay's on the outside looking in. And then at the end of the first film, she turns around and he's in there with two other wise guys for whatever, and the door is closed on her. Mm-hmm. And then even in this film, when she's at the house and he walks in, she hasn't left yet. They're trying to get her to leave before he shows up. He shows up, and he just walks up and closes the door. He's constantly closing his family out of his life, especially Kay.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think it with the two main female leads of this series, Kay and Connie. I think it's definitely Michael pushing them to the brink of finally exploding on him, especially because like again, you have to compare him to Vito as the movie does. You don't see Connie ever going to do that to Don Vito at all in these movies, or even Michael's mother doing that to him at all. And again, I think it's Michael pushing people to the brink of finally they have to say something to him and tell him when he's wrong and not give in to his BS anymore, especially as a wife getting pushed out of every situation, not being there for his family. When the house is, shot up, Michael basically sends them away. And he does his own thing. He doesn't go with his family in time where he needs to be with his family. He just leaves them with Robert Duvall, who, if I was a kid, I'd be scared to be left in anywhere with Robert Duvall.
Well, you see in the first film, when Sonny's killed, Vito actually comes down and says, "My wife is crying upstairs. What, why is she upset like that?" And Michael really doesn't seem to care how his wife feels. So you see the difference, kind of the contrast in how he's relating to his own wife too, and how Vito related to his wife.
Or even how they deal with death. Both deal with death very, very, very differently between two of them. Like in that scene where Vito consoles
Robert
Tom. Is it?
Oh, James Scott. No, yeah, it's Robert Duvall.
Robert Duvall, yeah,
that's when Sonny's killed.
Tom Hagen, yeah. And Tom in this movie, he's pretty much, I would say he's pretty much a similar character to, he doesn't have much change between the two movies, besides I think he's trying to get out from under Michael and not, deal with him anymore. And I mean, the big other sibling in this movie is Fredo in this movie, and how his whole storyline basically wraps up in this movie, and his whole character arc of what's going on here. Because in the first, again, characters that aren't given a whole lot to do the first time around are definitely shining in this movie. Like Kay and Connie and Fredo are kind of given definitely more of a spotlight this time around. And in Michael's search of who tried to assassinate his family, Fredo's name comes up in this, and that's where you find the way Michael deals with family and business, and how those two things are just intertwined through his entire life. What did you guys think of Fredo in this movie, given more to do, given his betrayal of Michael, and his ultimately what happens to him by the end of this movie? Spoilers, I guess. Spoilers is what I'm trying to get to for The Godfather Part II.
Is this the part where it say if it's spoiled, it's your fault, not ours?
Yeah, Fredo gets shot in the head and dies.
Right.
Spoilers.
I like that they gave him a lot more to work with in this film, and I thought John Cazale just had an outstanding performance. And I'm gonna put my plug. He should have won the award for Best Supporting Actor that year, and I don't even think he received a nomination, if I remember right. But
If If I had this wrong, I could be wrong, but all 6 movies he ever appeared in were nominated for Best Picture, but he was never nominated for any acting category in those.
No, I believe in this one, it was, Robert De Niro won it, but I think Lee Strasberg was also nominated, and the actor's name's going to slip my mind, but he played Frankie in this one.
Mm-hmm.
I'll pull up that year's Oscars. We'll go through it eventually.
Well, I mean, I think Michael's inability to best handle family versus business and all that stuff here. And, I like the fact that Fredo gets a little bit more of the beefier stuff because, he brings up the fact that he is the older brother, and that he basically is taking cues and taking, orders from the baby brother, kind of thing. So he runs that whole, animosity towards Michael kind of thing. And, Michael's also inability to best handle family and whatnot doesn't give the reassurance to his older brother that, yes, I'm in charge, but that doesn't mean that you're less part of the family and whatnot. So I think it's just a matter of how they both went about, each other's business within the family.
And I think that kind of relates back to the theme again of power, because they're struggling for the power structure in the family. The older brother should have more power, and you just kind of see that theme played out again there.
Mm-hmm.
And that's one thing that's really impressed me about watching these 2 movies for the first time is how much it is just ingrained in family and how everyone can relate to this story in some way, shape, or form, whether it is trying to, live up to your parents' legacy that they have and have built, or if after they pass, how to step into their shoes type of role. Or if you're the siblings, like in Fredo's case, if you're the older brother and your younger brother's kind of having to lead you and be the one that's protecting you and providing for you, that's not a good feeling if you're an older brother. Mm-hmm. And I think that's something kind of everybody can relate to in some way, shape, or form within this entire family here. And what makes these 2 movies especially so strong and why they resonate with so many people is everybody can relate to it. And like Fredo in this movie, I love his conversation with just him and Michael towards the end of the movie, of just them by the lakeside there, basically telling Michael, like, I should be in your situation. I should be the one protecting you. I'm the older brother. That's my job. That's what I'm supposed to do. And that's something that Fredo in the first movie we never got to see. And then finally here we get to see his thoughts on Michael taking over. And, you see the love and respect he does have for his brother that he's not getting reciprocated back to him. Mm-hmm. And that's really shown in that scene that the movie ends on. Is the dinner scene, the flashback to sometime right before the first movie of Michael announcing he's going to join the Marines during World War II, and the brothers all giving their 2 cents about it. And the only one supporting Michael in that situation is his brother Fredo, who shakes his hand, congratulates him, and wishes him the best of luck and shows him love and respect in that situation, and is never reciprocated now present day in terms of this movie between the 2 characters. And I mean, this is again such a tragic story. It's like a Shakespearean tragedy of Michael Corleone, and definitely the brother aspect adds to that type of Shakespearean tragedy of the entire saga. I pulled up the Oscars quick. Just maybe we can touch on these a little bit here, and we'll jump back. He was not nominated for that, but what a year for Francis Ford Coppola in this. Nominated for Best Picture for this and The Conversation the same year. What a good year for that guy. But yeah, pretty much every other acting category did have a Godfather name attached to it, especially supporting actor, in which 3 actors were nominated for this movie alone. One by
you wouldn't see stuff like that nowadays. No. Maybe 2 people in the same category, but never 3.
Yeah, one by Mr. Bobby De Niro for Best Supporting Actor that year. So he took away the only acting win award. Yes, and then Coppola won for Picture, Director, Adapted Screenplay. Those little awards.
Those little things.
Yeah.
You mean this is done by an award-winning director? No.
That Coppola guy's all right.
He doesn't. Maybe that's what we're getting at. Maybe that's why we're getting, Tarantino 3-hour movies and whatnot. He wants to be the new Coppola.
Okay, if we're going to talk Tarantino, I love see, Casey knows I'm a big Tarantino fan, but I love when maybe love is the wrong word, but when Vito's mom is shot with the shotgun and she's hit, that's like a Tarantino blast right there when she flies back like that. Tarantino uses that a lot. And I just saw it right away. I go, that's Tarantino right there.
Well, I mean, if you figure if there's anybody in Hollywood that is literally the film student or whatnot, it's Tarantino. So
That's right.
He probably is like, I saw this in The Godfather, so I need to put this in my movie. That's exactly what he would do.
And I will say you brought up the revenge on the Don that Vito had. Outside of slasher movies, that is the most vicious stab I think I've seen in a film where he actually kills the Don. But
again, if we're going to talk about homages maybe that have come out of this, there was a movie a few years ago called Green Room that has a box cutter scene that basically does the same thing, but shows all of it.
I haven't seen that.
It's a great movie, but it shows a lot of it. And again, I definitely think it may be a nod to Godfather Part II.
I would definitely agree with that. And as for Green Room, I definitely highly recommend, especially if you don't want to see Patrick Stewart be a bad guy.
Not just a bad guy, a neo-Nazi.
Oh yeah, a neo-Nazi on top of it. Yeah.
Do either of you watch the Yellowstone series?
No, I have not. I've heard good things about it.
Yeah.
If you line that up, it's eerily similar to The Godfather, with the Kevin Costner character being Vito, and because it's you have the son that returns from the army, and the dad's giving him, basically letting him take over the business, and then you have the lawyer sidekick who was adopted, and it just lines up. Taylor Sheridan had to have pitched that to the network as, well, this is The Godfather in Montana, because I watched The Godfather, and going back again as a filmmaker, and I'm a big fan of Yellowstone, I saw how it was lining up right away, and it's like that had to be the way that he pitched that.
Well, and they're probably, and he's probably like, hey, picture The Godfather, but in Montana with a bunch of country folk, and instead of Marlon Brando, we're going to get Kevin Costner. They're probably just like, where do we write the check?
Here's the
money. Had me a Kevin Costner. Now I kind of want to see that, Casey.
Yeah, I do want to check that out now. Yeah, I've heard really good things about that.
It's my wife and I watched all of them. We're anxiously waiting for the next season. We love it.
There's one series of sequences in this movie I want to get your guys' thoughts on, because I didn't love them. It's all the courtroom stuff. Whereas I feel that kind of slows this movie down for me. How do you guys feel about that? I think there's great stuff in it, but I don't know. I think we spend maybe a little too much time in the courtroom of this movie. What are your guys' thoughts on those scenes?
I start to lose the film. In regard, I don't know. There's just something about it during the inquiries or whatever it is that they were doing and whatnot. And I was just, for me, there was just something boring about the courtroom.
I think it slows the pacing down for me.
Yes.
Whereas the first movie doesn't feel like it's 3 hours. This one, I started to feel the 3 hours. Didn't help that my DVD version, I had to put in another disc. I've never had that on a DVD where I had to pop in another disc to watch the second half of this movie, but
oh yeah.
Yeah, to pop in another DVD disc.
Then you've never watched the DVD versions of Lord of the Rings. They do that too.
Oh, no, I have not.
I streamed this one, and in the middle it pops up intermission.
I
haven't seen that.
I have it on Blu-ray, and I didn't think nothing, and all of a sudden I'm like, intermission. I'm like, well, I guess And as soon as because intermission is like what 15 seconds kind of thing, and immediately like, well, I guess it's a good time to pause to go use the restroom. Mm-hmm. I haven't seen intermission pop up since I remember having my old VHS tapes of The Sound of Music. because it was definitely during that time when the movies were still long before the studios really started to do this whole, we have to keep it to 2 hours or less or whatever the case is, to the point where these old 60s and 70s movies were like, well, we got to at least let them go pee. So here, let's put intermission right here. So.
And kind of going back to the inquiry scene, again, I'm going to go back to that theme of power, and you can see it exerted in that scene. And that's why I kind of kept my interest, because I was seeing that theme again as the congressmen are trying to exert power over Michael. He's not having it. But then you have the underlying tension of the one senator who owes Michael a favor, basically, for getting him out of that situation with the prostitute. So you have that going on underneath, and you have the power play there, and then the power play of Frankie's brother coming in and hanging over his shoulder, basically. And so you see all those themes being played out again within that scene.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think the last sequence is the one that really worked for me in the courtroom. Is where you, like you said, you have Frankie's brother hanging out, just whispering with Michael, no idea what they're saying to each other, and you have, you have Frank just completely saying, "Well, no, he has nothing to do with the mafia. I have nothing to do with the mafia or what he's doing," and basically contradicting everything he said earlier to the sentence. And just, it's that power Michael has over people, and again, using family to take that power again is his motif of combining family and power and business all into one thing. And yeah, that last sequence of the courtroom scenes definitely worked for me the most out of all of them.
Yep.
Was there any other scenes you guys wanted to bring up, or favorite scenes that you had out of this movie? I mean, my favorite scene out of this movie is one we talked about for a while, is the scene with Vito, where the guy who owns the apartment building comes back and visits him. I think that's my favorite scene of the movie.
Oh, hands down, probably the best one. And the best part about that is because, you would think that it would be De Niro that would be the one that basically makes that scene. And he does to an extent, but he literally does not have to say a word. And everything is just beautifully orchestrated by the anxiety-inducing performance of the apartment owner. That, absolutely, you just, again, he doesn't have to say a word, but the chemistry between the two of them and just the way they interact with it, that I agree is probably the best scene of the entire film.
That was probably my favorite scene as well. But also kind of a combination of scenes that I really liked was when Vito killed, I'm going to slip up on his name, but the guy in the white suit. It lined up with how Michael killed the guy in the restaurant and the cop. If you watch that, they both picked up stashed guns. Vito could have killed that guy right away, but he waited. Kind of like when Michael came back to the table, he could have shot him right away, but he waited. And then it took 2 shots to kill him. And I think that is because it wasn't business, it was personal, and he wanted the guy he's killing to know who did it. And I found it really interesting how both of those lined up and kind of synced together like that. Shows the comparison between the two.
Agreed.
Yeah, that was another thing I was going to bring up. I love the tracking shots throughout that scene where you see Vito kind of going across the buildings, as he enters the building and as he exits, and taking apart the gun and disposing it of that way. I'm like, this is just incredibly great looking movie too. Just like the first Godfather, like the cinematography is just incredible. And I love, again, I wish more movies would use matte paintings, because I find matte paintings so charming, and I love seeing them in movies. And this really blends in really well to the background, the matte paintings of Godfather Part II. But yeah, I thought like all the cinematography of this is great. And the orange theory is ever more present in this movie than it was in the first movie. I think fully aware of what they had the first time around.
I really liked the color grade to both the films. The first one and the second one, it had the yellow tint to it, and it gave it that bronze look, which I think they were going for. Bronze was classic, and that made an instant classic, was just the look of it. And I hate to bring up the third Godfather, but the third Godfather doesn't have that. And I noticed that right away, was that the color grading is different in the third one from the first two. And I thought it was really interesting how they used the color grading to give it that classic look.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, as we're kind of wrapping into to final thoughts here on The Godfather Part 2, what were your guys' kind of final thoughts if you were to wrap this movie itself all up into one kind of final thought on the film?
Overall, I'd say, again, a really good film and whatnot, but I think that when trying to mentally compare Vito versus Michael, going back and forth between the timelines and whatnot, is, even though this is a long film, it's a great, very well done film, but might be something that will necessarily need a multiple viewings to be able to really pick up on all those little nuances that you didn't get the first time, or even the second, or even third time. Because I know that, being this is the only time I've ever seen this movie, I know I missed things.
Mm-hmm.
I think, again, mentioning the first film in conjunction with it is because everybody brings up which one is better, the first one or the second one. I thought the first film hammered the themes a little bit better and they were more upfront, but it was more of a, the straight linear storytelling.
Mm-hmm.
What impressed me, the second one, like you had mentioned, was the jumping back and forth, the gymnastics of creating that story structure and keeping it interesting. And you're still able to follow, okay, this is where we left off with Michael. Now we're back to Vito. Okay. And then you remember this is where we left off the Vito. And I never felt lost in it. And just to be able to pull it off, I think is, done by a master.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I do love the balance that he does have, that Coppola handles between the two, of jumping back and forth. And I think in terms of how the movie is presenting Michael versus Vito, I think it is kind of necessary to have them too, because if we had the straight linear story of just Michael and his kind of downward spiral of him and his family, I don't know if that would totally work by itself. I think you kind of do need the balance of Vito there and his upbringing and how he came to power, because it definitely is just a great balance of basically showing Vito's rise while Michael is falling at the same time, not necessarily with power, but with family. And I think I just love how the movie ends with, Vito is with his family and they're celebrating. They're a big, happy family. And then it ends with Michael and Kay get a divorce. The kids are not with either, really. They're with Connie to help raise them. He put on a assassination on his brother, so he has no one left with him. It's just Michael by himself, no one else there with him. And I think that is such a powerful look of how power corrupts, and it corrupts absolutely, and can destroy a man's life and leave him with absolutely nothing. And again, him leaving Kay out of every situation again is one scene we didn't talk about. After they have broken up and have divorced, as Kay is at the house visiting the kids, and Michael literally just shuts the door on her, says nothing, shuts the door on her, and that's it. It's such a ruthless, heartless move by Michael. And it's something him or his father would have done to their enemies, not to family. And I think that's definitely what this movie is showing. And again, like Brian said, I need another rewatch of this. There are things I did not pick up that I needed, that I know are there, that would be able to pick up in a rewatch definitely for both the first two Godfather movies. And me and Brian will talk about the third one that we never need to watch after this one.
I wish they would have just left it where it ended at the second one. And if I remember right, somebody out there can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think when the trailer came out for The Godfather 2, it actually said it was the final chapter. And if I remember right, back when Godfather 3 was released in 1990, I think the talk was even going on back then, this is just a money grab. And I was telling Casey off air, I watched the first 50 minutes of it, and that's about all I can make it through. And I don't remember ever seeing that film, so I don't think I made it through the first time back then when it came out either. So, but
yeah, me and Brian sure did, and we will talk about it. We're going to do a little bonus episode on Godfather Part 3. But yeah, let us know in the comments, what are your thoughts on Godfather Part 2? Let us know, what's your thoughts on it. And I guess the final question I do have, before I do forget to say it, if you guys were to pair this with another movie for your ultimate double feature of The Godfather Part 2 with something not named The Godfather, what would you pair it with?
I heard you guys ask this question on one of your previous shows because I listened to your episode on the first Godfather and The Outsiders, which I loved. The movie I would pair it with, especially after John Cazale's performance in this film, is I'm going to go with another Al Pacino Cazale pairing, and that's Dog Day Afternoon.
I've never seen that one either.
You haven't seen that one either?
If there's one thing I've learned while we've been doing this show is, wow, I'm completely sheltered on many, many, many films.
I ask every guest on my show, I ask him at the very end of the show, name 3 of your favorite films. And I've been trying to compile a list. I have so much homework now because these guests have named off all these movies that I've never seen. And it's like, wow, I need to get away from the microphone, away from Dolby Premiere for a while and start watching some films.
Right. I don't know if I have a good one here, Casey, to be honest, just because, I would say is if one could live through the extent of all of it is just watching all the Godfathers
Godfathers is the answer, Brian.
I know it's not the answer. I don't know if I have a good answer because how do you pair this with anything to, because if you put this ahead of it, you're going to be potentially let down to whatever you put afterwards with it, kind of thing. Or you forget about what you watched first because you watched The Godfather Part 2 and you're left on a high note, in a sense, in terms of the quality of a film, So I think this is one of those movies where it's a really hard answer to begin with.
I would, when I thought of this question, I had one in mind right away because you always talk about greatest sequels of all time, and Godfather Part 2 is always on that list, if not at the top of it.
Back to the Future 2?
And no, I will pitch maybe the greatest sequel of all time to pair with this, and also a Part 2, I guess, in its series. The Empire Strikes Back is mine to pair with this.
Hot Shots Part 2?
Hot Shots Part 2, yes, with Godfather Part 2. The Empire Strikes Back would be my pick to pair with this. Always the two movies that are thrown out there, greatest sequels of all time. For some people, sequels that are better than the original. I think in terms of Star Wars, yes, that is true. And Godfather, I don't, but I know there are people out there that do. And I think that'd make a great, fun double feature. Obviously, you end with Star Wars and also family drama in Star Wars too.
What? Family drama in Star Wars? That's not a thing.
Yeah. So, yeah, that'd be my pitch. Godfather Part 2, Empire Strikes Back.
Interesting. To go from Coppola to Lucas is a complete, left turn.
It's not a left turn. They're besties.
Well, on the back. I'm talking in terms of style type of movies kind of thing.
And Lucas didn't direct Empire, so
I suppose.
Yeah.
Michael Corleone, Darth Vader.
Yeah. Yeah. Both tragic stories.
Both wear black, I think.
Fair.
Yep. All right. So that is The Godfather Part 2. Obviously, if you haven't checked it out, go check out The Godfather Part 2. Recommend from all of us here. But let's get into the plugs for the show. You can find this podcast on Apple, Spotify, Stitcher, Google, Amazon Music, and on YouTube as well. And if you'd like to check us out and anything else we are doing, go check us out, backlot605.com. Like I said earlier in the show, we will not be covering the Oscars on the podcast, but we will have an article discussing the big winners and unfortunate losers from the night of the Oscars.
Yep. In terms of checking us out on the social media, check us out Backlot605 on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Also on the Facebook, check us out at the South Dakota Film Community Group. Join the conversation. Just what we got talking going on and all that fun stuff. It's a good fun time.
Mm-hmm. Also, if you are listening to this on Wednesday when this podcast does come out, join us that night, tonight, Wednesday, if you are listening then, at Full Circle Book Co-op, downtown Sioux Falls, 8 o'clock. We're going to meet up, talk some movies for our South Dakota Film Community Group meetup, downtown Sioux Falls, 8 till like 10 p.m., and just chit-chat about movies and what we've been watching, what's going on in the South Dakota movie sphere.
Mm-hmm.
We do got to give a shout out to our patrons. Patrons are Logan, Blake, Andy, Derek, Lou, Corey, Darren. Thank you guys so much for helping the show. And if you'd like to become a Patreon supporter of Backlot 605, check us out, patreon.com/Backlot 605. We are working on our bonus episode that our $5 tiers get each and every month. This month, they voted on The Conversation from Mr. Coppola as our bonus movie. So we're going to get some more John Cazale in that episode there. We'll get Coppola's other Best Picture nominee from the same year as The Godfather 2. So go check that out.
Little Gene Hackman.
A little Hackman. Could always use more Hackman. Kevin, where can people find Cinematic Heartland?
Well, Cinematic Heartland, a filmmaking podcast, is available wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts. Easiest way to get there is if you just go to our production company website, which is ilikeikefilms.com. Again, that's ilikeikefilms.com.
Awesome. Kevin, thank you again so much for joining us on the show. This was a pleasure. I'm glad we had someone that had some knowledge behind the Godfather series.
I don't know about that, but I really
more
appreciate
than me.
I really appreciate being asked to come to this show. I really enjoyed it. It's a lot of fun.
Absolutely. We'll have to do it again. And Brian, next week we are kicking off a brand new series. We're finishing Coppola month here this week. We're kicking off James Stewart month. Why?
Patrick Stewart?
Not Patrick Stewart. Maybe down the road we'll talk about only Star Trek and X-Men and X-Men movies and
The Green Room.
Green Room, I guess. But no, we're doing James Stewart. No relation to Mr. Sir Patrick Stewart. But we're going to kick it off with, we're going to celebrate Christmas in May. Why not? With It's a Wonderful Life kicking it off with us. So that is next week, joined by John Small from Sunny Radio talking about It's a Wonderful Life.
Still trying to wrap my head around watching this movie not at Christmas time.
It's only 30 minutes of it is a Christmas movie. I will make the argument that it is a Christmas movie, but that Die Hard is also more of a Christmas movie because it actually takes place all on Christmas, unlike It's a Wonderful Life.
Sure.
But it's a great movie nonetheless. And we'll talk about it next week. So again, Kevin, thank you so much for joining us. This was a pleasure. For Brian Mensing, I'm Casey Calderman. We'll check y'all out on next time on the Backlot of South Dakota.